I texted the family group chat. My surgery's on the 12th. Just need someone to drive me home. My sister replied, LOL. You actually thought we'd miss Cabo for that. My mom added, don't guilt us. This trip's been planned for months. I simply wrote, my mistake. What the nurse told her when she called the hospital later changed everything about that Cabo trip. That was the message I stared at on my phone screen, blinking twice to make sure I read it right. My sister, Amber, had sent it to the family group chat right after I'd texted. Hey, my surgery's on the 12th. Just need someone to drive me home. Shouldn't be more than an hour at the hospital. No emojis. No dramatics. Just a simple, direct message asking for help after a minor laparoscopic procedure. Amber's response came within seconds. Then, like salt in the wound, my mom chimed in. Don't guilt us. This trip's been planned for months. I just stared at the screen. All my life, I'd bent over backwards for them. Loaned money. Covered bills. Took care of Nana when nobody else wanted to. But now, when I needed a ride, just one single ride, I was being told I was an inconvenience to their vacation plans. I simply replied, my mistake. No other words. No guilt trips. No begging. Just those two words that carried 17 years of quiet resentment. I thought that would be the end of it. I'd arrange an Uber or ask a neighbor. It wasn't ideal, but I'd survive. But what they didn't know, was that when my mom called the hospital 4 days later just to check on me, the nurse told her something that flipped their precious Cabo trip upside down. Amber wasn't always like this. She used to braid my hair when I was 8 and tell me I was her favorite little genius. Back then, before Cabo trips and Instagram influencers, we were close, or I thought we were. But somewhere between her graduating college and getting a taste for lifestyle vlogging, I stopped being her sister and started being her assistant. Her safety net. Her free bank. It started small. She forgot her credit card at brunch, so I paid. Then she accidentally double-booked her eyelash appointment and needed someone to pick up her dog. Somehow I always said yes. Mom wasn't much better. She used to call me the practical one, which apparently translated to the one we can burden without guilt. Dad died when I was 23. His insurance policy had been split between me and Amber, but when Mom cried and said she couldn't cover the mortgage, I gave her my half. Amber didn't even return my calls for 2 weeks. When she finally did, she was in Mexico and said, Ugh, you should have told me earlier. I already bought this retreat package. I worked double shifts to make rent that year. Nobody noticed. By the time I turned 31, I had 2 herniated discs, no savings, and an ulcer that landed me in the ER because I skipped too many meals trying to afford rent and medications while still helping them. When the gynecologist said I'd need minor surgery, nothing major, just a laparoscopy to remove a benign mass, I figured, maybe this once, they'd step up. It wasn't even life-threatening. I just needed a ride home and someone to sit with me for a few hours post-anesthesia. I didn't want to ask friends. I'd been too embarrassed to tell most of them how bad things had gotten. My responsible reputation didn't include the part where I'd gone into debt covering my sister's car repairs after she rear-ended a Mercedes and called me crying. So I sent the message in the family group chat, and Amber replied with that. LOL, you actually thought we'd miss Cabo for that. That wasn't just a refusal. It was a slap. A public announcement that I didn't matter. That my health was a punchline. Mom's follow-up was worse. Don't guilt us. This trip's been planned for months. Like I was manipulating them. Like asking for help after being sliced open was a selfish act. I stared at the messages for a long time. Then I typed, my mistake. I didn't cry. Not then. I just went to my calendar and scheduled the Uber for 4 p.m. from the surgical center to my apartment. I'd already arranged a key pickup with the landlord in case anything went wrong. I'd prepared. I always prepared. They'd taught me that. The surgery day came, and everything went smoothly. The doctor was kind. The nurse held my hand as the anesthesia kicked in, and when I woke up groggy and nauseous, the first thing I did was check my phone. No messages. No, how did it go? No, we're thinking of you. Amber had posted an Instagram story of her sipping from a coconut in a bikini with the caption, Manifesting Health, Wealth, and Hot Weather #Cabo Diaries. I threw up in the hospital trash can. The nurse, a gentle older woman named Claire, sat beside me and rubbed my back. You okay, sweetheart? I nodded, tears in my eyes. Yeah, just anesthesia. She handed me a bottle of water and then helped me into the wheelchair. Your ride's on its way. I nodded again. Uber. She blinked. You didn't have anyone to pick you up? I shrugged. They had other plans. She frowned but didn't pry. Instead, she handed me a little packet of crackers. Here, you'll need something in your stomach. I made it home and collapsed into bed, pain meds dulling the ache in my abdomen, but not the one in my chest. It was 3 days later when the call happened. I was asleep when the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but answered anyway. Hello. Hi. Is this Jessica Martinez? Yes. This is Mary from Northlake Medical. Your mother called earlier trying to reach you. I just wanted to confirm your condition, as per your consent form. My heart rate spiked. Wait, what? She called the hospital? Yes. She said she hadn't heard from you and was worried. We didn't give out details, of course, but she was quite persistent. Eventually, I told her that everything had gone well and that you'd been discharged and transported home via Uber. Oh, I said, my voice flat. There was a pause. Then Mary added gently. She sounded surprised you didn't have someone there with you. I chuckled. It came out dry and bitter. After we hung up, I opened my phone. Still no messages from Mom or Amber. Then, 5 minutes later, my screen lit up. Mom. Jessica, why didn't you tell us you were going alone? You should have said something. I just assumed you had someone else. Then another. I talked to the hospital. That wasn't okay. Then Amber. Wait, you actually went through with it? Alone? Are you serious? I feel kinda bad now. Like not bad bad. But you should have said something if you were desperate. Desperate? That word simmered in my stomach like poison. I didn't respond. I went into WhatsApp and archived the chat. But the real twist came the next day. Amber FaceTimed me. I let it ring. She tried again. I finally answered. Her face was tanned, hair braided with tiny beads, but there was tension in her eyes. Hey, she said, voice sheepish. I didn't answer. She sighed. Look, I didn't realize you were going alone. Like, I thought maybe you had a friend or something. I asked you. I know, but you didn't make it seem serious. It was a surgical procedure. I mean, technically, she said, rolling her eyes. But you're fine now, right? I stared. Amber bit her lip. Anyway, I talked to Mom. We're thinking maybe we should fly back early. Like tomorrow. The vibes here are kinda off anyway. I blinked slowly. Because of my surgery? Well, yeah. And Mom's upset. She keeps saying we look like monsters. Which is, like, dramatic. But yeah. I leaned into the camera, my voice flat. You don't need to come back. She paused. Wait. What? I don't need anything from you. Jessica. I hung up. She called again. I blocked her. But Mom? She did something I didn't expect. She booked a flight. She showed up. I opened the door, still in my robe, stitches fresh and aching. She stood there with her purse clutched to her chest, eyes glossy. I didn't know, she said. Yes, you did. She broke. Right there, on my welcome mat. And that was when I knew things would never go back to how they were before Cabo. She stayed in the doorway for a full minute, just staring at me, like I was some fragile object she didn't know how to handle anymore. Can I come in? Mom asked finally. Voice small. I said nothing, just turned and walked back toward the couch. If she wanted in, she'd have to step over her own guilt. The place wasn't a mess. I'd cleaned yesterday, despite the pain. But I looked like hell. My hair was up in a greasy knot, sweatpants stained from spilled soup, painkillers, and ginger ale bottles littering the side table. Mom sat down stiffly across from me, purse still clutched in both hands like a shield. Jess, I had no idea you were completely alone. You had every idea. Her jaw twitched. I didn't think you'd really go through with it without telling us more. You didn't say it was serious. I looked her straight in the eye. I told you the date. I told you I needed a ride. That was the message. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Amber said. LOL. That shut her up. For a second, she shifted in her seat, glanced around like she was looking for a script to follow. I think we all just assumed you were exaggerating. You've always been so independent. You mean quiet. I mean strong. No. You mean convenient. You mean I've never made you inconveniently accountable. Mom flinched. That's not fair. No, Mom. What's not fair is you saying, don't guilt us, when I asked for a single ride after years of carrying this family like it was my job. I grabbed the pharmacy receipt from the table and tossed it toward her. That's $312 of meds I had to cover out of pocket because I couldn't use the family's insurance card anymore. The one you said we'd all share when Dad passed. But guess who maxed it out with Amber's Botox sessions? Mom's face went pale. That's not true. It is. I called the provider. She hit the cap last month. She blinked rapidly, then whispered. She said it was for migraines. She said it was to a salon in Beverly Hills. Her mouth opened, shut, opened again, like a fish suffocating on dry land. Then the floodgates opened. You have no idea what it's like being her mother, she said suddenly, voice trembling. Do you think it's easy? Amber needs a lot. She always has. I wasn't supposed to need anything, right? The silence after that was thunderous. She lowered her gaze. You were always the one who didn't complain. Because complaining didn't change anything. Then, finally, the dam cracked in me too. Do you know what it felt like, lying in that hospital bed with no one there? Do you know what it's like to wake up confused and in pain and have the nurse hold your hand because your family is sipping cocktails in a pool? Her eyes brimmed. Jessica, I'm sorry. No, you're not sorry. You're panicking. You're afraid of how it looks. You're afraid someone, your friends, the neighbors, the aunts, might find out what kind of mother you've really been. She sobbed then. That's not true. It is, I snapped. You're not here because you care. You're here because you got called out. She buried her face in her hands. I watched for a beat, and then I stood. You should go. Her head shot up. Jess, please. I'm tired. My stitches hurt. And your guilt isn't helping. She stood up, clutching her purse like it was the only solid thing left in her world. Where? Where do we go from here? I looked her dead in the eye. I don't know, but not back. That's for sure. She left. The next day, Amber showed up. I didn't open the door. She pounded on it for 5 full minutes. Then texted, open up. We need to talk. Then, I canceled the last 2 nights of Cabo. Got home early. Be grateful. Be grateful. Like it was some gift. I finally opened the door, not to let her in, but to look her in the face. She was still in her airport sweats, designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. Her expression was half concerned, half irritated. God, you look like hell. Thanks. Surgery does that. She blinked. Look, this got blown way out of proportion, okay? I didn't mean to sound like a bitch. I was joking. I thought you had people. Friends. Nurses or something. I asked you. Amber exhaled like I was being unreasonable. Jess, you know how important that trip was. It was comped. A brand deal. I had to post content. I was in a hospital bed. And I apologized. What more do you want from me? I stared at her. This woman with my blood in her veins and absolutely none of my humanity. I want you to admit it. That you never intended to show up. She tilted her head. I didn't think I had to. And there it was. The truth. Amber never thought she owed me anything. Not a ride. Not a text. Not a single thought in her busy, curated life. You're right, I said quietly. You didn't. And I don't owe you anything anymore either. Her face twisted. What's that supposed to mean? I held up my phone. It means I reached out to your sponsor and shared what happened. She paled. I told them the truth. That you mocked your sister's surgery and used their wellness trip to dodge responsibility for a family medical emergency. I attached screenshots. Her voice rose. You didn't. They pulled the campaign. Amber staggered like I'd slapped her. You cost me 10 grand. You cost me 10 years. She opened her mouth, but I shut the door. And this time, it stayed shut. The silence after the storm was bitter, like the kind of cold coffee you forget on the counter for hours. I sat by the window, watching a gray afternoon crawl across the sky, and for the first time in years, I felt something that resembled freedom. Amber hadn't messaged me again. Her Instagram had gone dark. The last post of her in a pool, captioned #grateful, disappeared a day after I sent that email to her sponsor. I didn't bother checking whether she'd clawed back her $10,000. I didn't care. A few days later, I got a letter from the clinic. Short, impersonal, but crucial. Ms. Martinez, we have refunded $312 to your account. Per internal policy, inappropriate third-party use of your shared plan has been investigated and resolved. Amber had used my insurance again. That refund meant they caught her. And this time, it was over. Mom tried to crawl back into my life. First, the text messages. Can we please talk? I didn't sleep last night. I feel terrible. I was a bad mother. For a moment, I thought maybe this was remorse. Real remorse. But then came the shift. You've always been so distant. I just wanted peace between my girls. You're making me feel like a failure. So I sent her one sentence. If it hurts, It's because the mirror is finally clean. And then I blocked her. 3 weeks later, my cousin Jane reached out. You okay? I texted back honestly. Yes. Finally. She replied with a heart emoji, then added, just so you know, your mom and Amber are telling people you had an emotional crisis. That you're lashing out. I actually laughed. Out loud. Sitting on my new turquoise sofa, still sore from surgery, still healing from years of silence. I laughed. Let them talk. Let them scramble to twist the story. I didn't care anymore. Because for once, I was done playing the role they wrote for me. I went back to work a few weeks later. My boss, blunt, always a little gruff, just looked at me and said, take whatever time you need. You're solid. More compassion in one sentence than I'd gotten from my family in 10 years. I changed the locks on my apartment. I sold the old couch, the one Amber crashed on when her latest breakup felt too emotional to deal with alone. I bought a new one. Turquoise. Firm, but somehow comforting. Like a restart button. I bought a coffee machine. Nothing fancy, but mine. I signed up for pottery classes. Always wanted to. After 2 weeks, I held my first mug in my hands. Lopsided, a little ugly, but honest. And I loved it. Then something unexpected happened. The clinic receptionist called. Her voice was careful. Jessica, just a heads up. Your mother tried to reassign you as her emergency contact. You're not anymore, per your request, but just letting you know. I nodded, hung up, then called a lawyer. We drafted a legal notice disavowing any future financial responsibility for both my mother and Amber. I signed it with a steady hand. Love, but no more money. 2 months later, a message landed in my inbox. It was from an unfamiliar Facebook account. Hi, I'm Jake, Amber's ex. I know this is random, but I saw what you did. I saw how they reacted. And I think you're the first person who ever held them accountable. Just thank you. You made me feel a little less crazy. I cried. Not because it hurt, but because someone finally said it. I saw it too. You're not crazy. You're not alone. I've never believed in fresh starts. Not really. But maybe this wasn't a beginning. Maybe it was a closing. A long overdue shutting of doors that should have never stayed open. I wake up now without dread. I don't check my phone for apologies that never come. I make coffee in my kitchen, sit by the window in my turquoise chair, and I breathe. And I smile. Because for the first time, I live a life that is truly mine. It's been 4 months. 4 months since I asked for a ride and got laughed at. 4 months since I lay on a hospital bed, shaking from anesthesia, and realized the only hands holding mine were strangers. 4 months since I said 2 words, my mistake, and watched my old life implode. And it was the best decision I've ever made. I don't miss them. That's what surprised me the most. I thought cutting ties would feel like grief, like losing a limb. But it felt more like shedding skin, dead, dry, suffocating skin I'd been trapped in for years. My days are quieter now, but also louder in the right ways. I hear my own thoughts again. I sleep through the night. I no longer flinch when my phone buzzes. Because it doesn't buzz for guilt. It doesn't ring for obligation. There's no one calling me to bail them out, cover their mess, drop everything, and serve. Amber still tries sometimes. She created a new number last week and texted, "You ruined my career. Happy now?" And I looked at it and smiled. Because yes, I'm happy now. I've started writing again. Just for me. Journaling, mostly. Processing the things I never allowed myself to say out loud. Like, I was the scapegoat, not the support system. Being needed is not the same as being loved. Forgiveness without accountability that just repeats the same harm. Big truths. Ugly ones. But necessary. I've been redecorating too. Every corner of this apartment that once held the weight of silent sacrifice now holds pieces of me. Plants I'll probably forget to water. Art I bought just because it made me laugh. That lopsided mug from pottery class? It's my favorite now. It reminds me that imperfection can still hold warmth. I ran into my old high school friend Maya last week at the farmer's market. She asked how my family was. And I said, there, where they belong, far away. She blinked, then smiled like she understood more than she let on. I always wondered how you stayed so calm growing up, she said. Now I get it. You weren't calm. You were surviving. That hit me harder than it should have. Because she was right. I was never the calm one. I was the controlled one. The silenced one. The expected one. Not anymore. I want to leave you with this. If you're reading this, and your family thinks love means guilt, obligation, and self-sacrifice, if they make you feel selfish for needing help, for saying no, for setting boundaries. If you've ever laid awake wondering if you're the problem because they keep treating you like one, you're not. You're not broken. You're not dramatic. You're not cruel. You're done. And done is powerful. Because done doesn't mean bitter. It means reborn. The last message I ever sent to my family was this: I hope someday you realize what you lost. But even if you don't, I haven't lost myself. Not anymore. And for the first time in my entire life, I meant every single word. The ride I needed never came. But I still made it home. On my own. Stronger. Free.